Hello and welcome back. Today we are standing in front of one of the world's most significant, most iconic bridges, the Brooklyn Bridge. So many of you know the Brooklyn Bridge. If you see it in a photograph, you'll recognize it. But do you know the story behind the Brooklyn Bridge? Do you know the man who designed it and his inspirations and the will it took for him to do it? So today's lecture, we go over this history, not only the scientific aspect of the Brooklyn Bridge, where I'll talk to you about some terminology that engineers use for design, but I also will tell you the history of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's a dramatic story, and it's a great story. I can only go through it in an abbreviated manner today. I suggest that you read more about this because it really is a tremendous story. It was a tremendous feat of engineering to have this bridge designed. Last time we talked about some bridges in the UK and we left off with Stephenson and Brunel. So Stephenson and Brunel were designing some long span bridges, and long span for that period of time, this is the 1850s, was on the order of 500 feet. Today we're going to look at John Roebling's significant bridges, and in particular 3 of them. So we're going to look at the Niagara River Bridge that he was designing around the same time that Stephenson and Brunel were designing their bridges in the US, except for the span of the Niagara River Bridge is much longer than what Stephenson and Brunel were doing. Stephenson, Brunel, and the Niagara River Bridge were all bridges for railroads. The other significant bridges by Roebling were the Cincinnati Bridge and, of course, the Brooklyn Bridge. So we're going to start off by looking at the Niagara River Bridge, touch upon a little bit the Cincinnati Bridge, which is a prototype essentially to the Brooklyn Bridge. But today's lecture is going to focus on his masterpiece, the Brooklyn Bridge. I like to start off my lectures with introducing the engineer. I think that the personality, the person, plays an important role to having these bridges designed and accomplished. So these people not only have to have a real strong technical understanding of the mathematics, the engineering, but they also in many cases have to have a strong will. They have to persevere, and that is John Roebling's story. So John Roebling came from Prussia. He graduated in 1826 from the Royal Polytechnic Institute of Berlin. And before I continue telling you about his experience as an engineer, I want to tell you a little bit about his personality. What I tell my students is that his personality matches his face. So if you look at an image of John Roebling, you see a very tough-looking man, and indeed he was a tough man. I read this book by David McCullough called The Great Bridge, and it's a great book to understand not only the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, but also the personality of John Roebling. My impression from the research I did on John Roebling is that he was certainly a man who was admired, but admired from afar. He wasn't a man that you would be very friendly with, close up to. He wasn't a very open person, opening up and speaking of his feelings, so to speak. He was emotionally and physically a very tough man. He was a believer in hydropathy, the healing powers of water. So for example, if he didn't feel well at night, or whenever he didn't feel well, he would sit in a scalding hot tub of water and then jump out and wrap himself in ice-cold sheets. He would take cold baths every night, for example, and he was known to drink concoctions of raw egg, charcoal, turpentine, and warm water. So this is the kind of person he was, an indicator of the kind of person that he was physically, very tough person. He was a man of strong will. If he was convinced he was right, it was almost impossible to convince him otherwise. So this is the backdrop to John Roebling, a person of strong will, of physical and emotional strength, and it took that personality to make the Brooklyn Bridge a reality. John Roebling was also a close friend and a student of the philosopher George Hegel. George Hegel, who authored Alan Trachtenberg, wrote this about Hegel to describe him. He said, quote, "He inspired his students with radical dreams of self-realization, of personal potency, to realize one's potential. This was the aspect of Hegel's system which struck Roebling most forcefully." Roebling, after graduating, he was an assistant engineer, and he had these high hopes of being a designer of suspension bridges. He was fascinated by the suspension bridges that he was reading about, but he felt that the German life wouldn't allow him that opportunity. He said that, quote, "the excessive bureaucracy," end quote, of German society defeated his hopes. He wrote in his diary that nothing could be accomplished without, quote, "an army of counselors, ministers, and other officials discussing the matter for 10 years, making long journeys and writing long reports, while the money spent on all these preliminaries comes to more than the actual accomplishment of the enterprise. So you can hear the dissatisfaction in his diary entry. So inspired by Hegel's teaching, he sees America as a new hope, and in 1831 he leaves Europe for America. He leaves with his brother and a small band of German immigrants, and they land in Philadelphia on August 6, 1831. They founded a German farming community near Pittsburgh called Saxonburg, and he became a farmer for 6 years. But after 6 years, in 1837, he becomes bored with farming and he takes a job for the Pennsylvania state as an engineer. One of his first responsibilities was a survey for the Portage Railroad. At that time, canals were a main source of transportation, and when the canals were blocked by mountains, the boats were loaded on railway trucks and hauled over the mountains. So there was an engine at the top of the mountain, and the rope connecting the engine to the truck was a 6-inch thick hemp rope. Now these ropes frayed easily, therefore they were dangerous, and they had a short lifespan, and therefore they were expensive. So Roebling saw an opportunity. He developed a technique of spinning wires to form wire rope, which was smaller, stronger, and lighter than hemp rope. He was given this opportunity, and his wire rope manufacturing business was born. At first, this business was in Saxonburg, and then in 1848, he moved it to Trenton, New Jersey. The success of this business provided him economic security and thus freedom to pursue his ambitions. His career as a bridge builder began after his wire rope business was established. In 1845, he won a competition for a small aqueduct, a 7-span over the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, which was a suspension bridge. And today, that suspension bridge is no longer in existence. By 1850, Roebling had 6 suspension bridges to his name, each one using rope from his wire rope manufacturing company. The oldest suspension bridge in the U.S. is one designed by Roebling in 1848, the Delaware Aqueduct. This bridge is still in existence today, and it is located near the intersection of the 3 states of Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey.